This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by Penny and the Yeti. You can get it from Paper Cuts on April 21st, 2026, everywhere you get your graphic novels.
Attention, citizens! It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. This is a special from The Office interview with Jimmy Gasparo and Jimmy Kamichuk. Thanks for joining us, Jimmy, and thanks for arranging all this, Lyndon. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, oh, thanks for having me. And yeah, thanks to Lyndon for setting this up. I had him and Steven call on my podcast not that long ago, talking about The Laundrymen Book 2, which is a series I love. And afterwards, Lyndon said, "Oh, I think you would enjoy talking to Gregory on Super Pulp Science." And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a ton of fun. I'd love to." So yeah, thanks, Lyndon.
And here we are doing our best to repair cross-border relations between our two great nations. One
It needs to be done. It needs to be done.
So, for the dear listener, who we often address directly in the show, I will let you know that Jimmy has a brand new book coming out from Paper Cuts called Penny and the Yeti, and that is how we started uh, getting in touch with one another. I got sent this book, Penny and the Yeti. Lyndon arranged it. You were kind enough to send a digital copy, and I thought, oh, it looks so cute. I'll just read this quick little kid's story. Um, Jimmy, it is anything but a cute little kid's story, but it's also a cute little kid's story. It's like a stone wrapped in a fuzzy shell. That's just like a weight. I was by page 50. I felt like I needed to take a break from the emotional boulder I was pushing up the hill. What is going on in this book?
Well, great question. Yeah, so Penny and the Yeti started as just a four-page fun little short that from a story idea that me and my 8-year-old, I have two kids, Charlotte and Penny. Charlotte's 13 and Penny's 8. But when Penny was 5 in 2022, we were coming up with a story idea just for something fun to do as I was putting her to bed. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be neat to like take this idea and script it and hire an artist and kind of show her how you would make a comic, how you would tell a story, how you would get somebody involved, the process of it. I thought, she's 5, she likes comics. We read a ton of comics and graphic novels, and we came up with this little story idea called Yeti and the Big Stomp, and it part of it is in Penny and the Yeti. You'll listeners, if they get the book and read it, you'll notice the part where Yeti and Penny go to a diner and Yeti gets upset. And so a friend, Beck Kubrick, put me on to Amber Aiken. I got Amber involved to do the 4-page short. And then when Mad Cave, who is the bigger company that owns Paper Cuts, put out a call for, like, they had their open submissions. I thought, well, could I take this 4-page story and turn it into something like bigger, and what would it be about? And
And you
so
thought the
that
crushing weight of a potential impending divorce would be the perfect subject of a fun little kid's adventure.
well, as all things do, it started out based in like Penny is my she's 8 now, but like she's always been kind of our like empath. She doesn't like any type of arguing or conflict, and she's very sensitive to it. And I thought, man, I've seen a lot of stories where kids are dealing with like the aftermath of the divorce, and I've seen stories, where it's a happy family, and there's the conflict comes from somewhere else. But I haven't really seen too many stories, at least not geared towards kids, that parents could also read about a family that's in like a bit of a crisis. And there's nothing major. It's not like a concept that would be too difficult for kids to understand, like somebody gambled all the money away or somebody had an affair or anything like that. They're Fenton and Maxine. I think are decent parents. I just think it's the everyday stuff of life when you're with somebody for so long that you have a tendency sometimes to get on each other's nerves and forget that
Really, I wanted to
kids.
shake them both. I just wanted to grab those parents and shake them so hard. But you're exactly right. It's not the high concept in Penny and the Yeti is the way in which imagination plays a role. And like what is reality and how does a kid see reality and who allows for the reality of a kid. That's the high concept in Penny and the Yeti. The straight facts of just how life is hard when you have two kids and two professional parents. My gosh, you didn't pull too
Yeah,
from there.
I think kids are more perceptive than most adults, not like professional adults who are in like child psychology or child development. Certainly they understand. But I think most parents that I know and I talk to and I am friendly with, I feel like, and this is myself included, we don't give kids enough credit for how perceptive they are, how smart they are. And I think it's just something that happened in my own life a little bit that I just kind of played into. Um, where you sometimes get so involved in the conflict or what's going on with your partner that you forget that the kids are just soaking up, all of this. And so the character of Penny, different from my daughter Penny, but the character of Penny didn't, she didn't like it. She doesn't like the arguing. It really affects her. And her older sister's kind of checked out. Perry, the older sister's kind of checked out. And Penny didn't have any way to really she felt like she didn't have a good way to like to deal with it. Like she felt like nobody was listening to her. And then that's when Yeti kind of walks off one of Perry's, the older sister's drawings and comes, right into Penny's life. And it's kind of like a little bit of a foil, but I really think I wanted to make the relationship between Penny and Yeti that they're both kind of helping each other out. Like you don't know what Yeti's world is like if what the Yeti's deal is, but you know, Penny's kind of teaching him some stuff too, and I think he's really um uh is there, for Penny to kind of bounce some of her imaginative ideas off of while she's at the same time trying to deal with some of the conflict in her house. So it was a fine line I felt we had to walk to not not wrap everything up in a neat bow, everything solved, but to not make it too complicated that kids will be like, I don't understand what's going on here.
Well,
Um,
can I say as the adult reading the story, one of the things I really appreciated about your writing in it, the art really married itself to the beats of the story, but the way that the economy of words, the arguments begin as just little things. And those little things are themselves, they don't increase really over the course of the story. They just kind of boil like boiling water. Like you just know that eventually it's going to boil over. And it's so um metronomic in the page turns. It's like, oh no, oh the kids are having fun, oh they're using their imagination, oh the sisters, they're so cute. I hope the parents don't say something stupid. There it is. And it just happens again and again until you're like, oh no, this is something's happening here. And I just felt as from a straight up writing standpoint, because I don't know you, I don't know your work. This is my first introduction to your work. And what I expected from the cover and the style of art wasn't um, typical of the depth of the stories that usually pair with art of that style. And I found that to be such a refreshing evolution of the genre. So bravo. Really good job.
well, I mean, thank you, but a ton of that credit goes to we had two different editors on the story, Stephanie Brooks and Teddy Leo, both fantastic. Stephanie was the first editor on it, and a ton of credit goes to Stephanie, who really, you know, made sure that at the forefront of my mind, was always keeping in mind not only how adults would read the story, but how kids would read the story, and always trying to make sure that I didn't have a tendency to push the arguing into like a direction where it was too explosive, where it would scare anybody or really make the parents seem like, the quote unquote bad guys.
Hey, hey, Careful my drawings back there. And don't step on the trout
Or my flowers, they're still alive.
or Mom's flowers.
They seem like they could fix it if they would just talk to each other instead of at each other.
Yeah.
And so
That's
they're hopeful. They don't seem like menacing bad parents. You never, or at least my feeling through the first like 60 pages, it wasn't like, oh man, they should just call it quits and move on. Like it clearly is not going to work. Right. I'm both of my parents were previously divorced before they got together and had me. So like I'm sort of in favor of divorce, because lead to good things. And not everyone is right for everyone. And it can be bad for kids in an environment if it is toxic. But this didn't feel like that. It was like, oh, you could be saved if only. And then my one fear, by probably about page 70 of the story, I was like, oh no. The author, who was James to me at that time, before you introduced yourself as Jimmy, I was like, this James fellow, he's making this a story about how it's kids' job to parent the parents. Oh no, this is a dangerous lesson. It is never kids' jobs to parent their parents. What is going to happen? Oh no. And you put those two things in uh, such great balance by the end of the story. I was really, really impressed.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, I trying to tell this story in a way that I thought kids would enjoy and maybe get something out of it, and parents as well. And again, a lot of credit to Stephanie and Amber. Amber Aiken was a dream to work with, and her art is so fun and so cute. And I don't mean like cute I mean in a very like good way. Like Yeti, you just want to hang out with Yeti and be like, I've had a bad day. Let's just like sit together. And so I think it really makes some of those more difficult moments in the book work because of how fun and bright and accessible Amber's art is. Um, but a couple of things I was mindful of because of Stephanie and because also what I and Amber and I wanted to do with this story. We never wanted to make it seem like, Penny and Yeti and Perry were responsible for the parents or had to parent the parent. Like that's what Penny tries to do. That's what, she tries to do unsuccessfully. But I wanted to make it clear to kids reading it that like they don't have any role in that. They can voice their concerns or they can voice what upsets them or they can voice those big feelings about what's going on with mom and dad, but they don't have any responsibility in that. The other thing I wanted to make sure I tried to do is that I didn't want to wrap everything up in a neat bow because I agree. Sometimes people can get stuck. Sometimes maybe divorce is the better option for people. They're just not meant to be together. I didn't want to say one way or the other with Fenton and Maxine, and I wanted the story, a little bit of a spoiler alert, but like I didn't want to wrap everything up in like a nice neat bow, and um that everything is just all magically better now. Even though we have kind of like a magical, fantastic character with Yeti, I didn't want to lose the authenticity of like there's a real family with some real issues that they have to deal with one way or the other. And if anything, they needed to kind of be shaken up from, like you said, talk to each other and not at each other. And maybe things are going to be better for all four, or five of them, including Yeti now.
I liked the way that the family members all tried to meet the problem where they were. What I found also interesting about how the story is presented, dear listener, is that, and maybe you don't have to answer this, or maybe I missed something in my read of it, but it does not seem like we are given a direct answer whether Yeti is really there or not. And whether because in my youth, I worked in the group home system and I worked adjacent with a lot of child psychologists. And the idea of an imaginary friend as proxy for being able to express your problems, this seemed like what it was. But then other adults would address Yeti directly, and it was like no big deal. But then the same way that parents or adults that are in on the story will also address a child's imaginary friend. So I was like, okay, well, maybe Yeti's not there. And then, spoiler alert, Yeti goes to Yeti's own realm at the end and is clearly going to lead a rich inner life. Uh, how did you decide all of these disparate pieces, you and Amber?
We talked a lot about that in the early development of the story. Like, is Yeti is Yeti like a creation? You know, because Yeti is a drawing that Perry does. Penny's older sister Perry. They're doing sidewalk art. You know, listeners. That's how it happens in the story. And then Penny really liked the sidewalk drawing so much that Perry drew Yeti on a piece of paper to give to Penny. You know, and then at one point in time, Yeti kind of comes to life. And so Amber and I talked quite a bit about, is Yeti going to be, you know, imaginary? Is he real? Is he just the piece of, you know, the drawing on the paper come to life? I I wanted Yeti to be real, but I tried to get around the idea of explaining how Yeti got to be there by everyone just accepts Yeti. The, there's just this new character in the home. Everyone just accepts him. I didn't want the story to be about, well, how did he get here? Where did he come from? I mean, if the audience wants to, you know, the readers want to think about that and come up with their own ideas, great. But Yeti's here now, and the focus is going to be on Penny and Perry and the family, and we're not going to deal with the source of the magic of it. Maybe we will if Paper Cuts lets us do a future volume.
Well, it's also that old rule in writing, which is you can't introduce more than one impossible thing at a time in the story, and you have enough impossible things. Yes, there's a magical character, but there's also a little girl trying to communicate clearly with her parents her emotions. An impossible task for most people in general, never mind a young person to an old person. Um, I also feared, so this is a question that may edge into, we probably should have had spent more time together, Jimmy, before I ask you this question directly. Are are there autobiographical elements in this? There were some things that seemed so specific, so perfectly specific that I was like, wow, this has got to be
Yes.
from the lived experience. Yeah.
No, I mean, I I'll be honest. Yeah, there are. Um, and they're specific for a number of reasons. There are autobiographical elements. Just, I mean, I've been, you know, I've been with my wife. We've been married for 18 years together. I think for almost 23. Um, and so, yeah, sure, there are a lot of, I mean, 23 years of getting into, you know, arguments, fights, like different types of conflict. And although I don't know if I used like anything that I remembered, you know, like right from real life onto the page, but I took, you know, some of those things that I was thinking about in my own relationship with my spouse, and uh, remembering that rule of writing that the more specific, the better. It always seems like if you are too broad, it kind of gets lost. But if you're very specific about something, people tend to find a way to relate to that or actually relate to that more. So I took some of those things, some of the the conflicts and arguments from over the years that we have had, and just tried to find something similarly specific that I could put in there for Fenton and Maxine.
I would love to know more about how you found Amber and how you started working together. But before I do that, I just want to make this comment about the book too, because the dear listener obviously can't see it at the moment. Despite this heaviness, there's such a feeling that you, the reader, are safe inside this story because of the style of the art. So even though it has these moments that ring so true of the real world, it has this just breathy, carefree economy of line and color that just make the whole thing feel like, okay, yeah, all right, I'm going to be safe here. I'm sure they got my best interest in mind. It's going to be all right.
Nothing more than rats getting a lucky shake from society, if you ask me. Well, I know where you are if I need you.
You know, you started with a 4-page story, you said, but This is a much larger undertaking than that. I think it's 120 pages of illustration. That is no small feat.
Yeah. So, the first story I ever had published a few years ago was in Lifeline Comics by Visibility. And so I had submitted a story idea and had a 4-page short about friends that play D&D, and the guys playing D&D, their characters have a relationship, and the one and then the two friends realize they have feelings for each other. One in particular has only ever dated women before, and so he's kind of coming to grips that he thinks he's developed during D&D, thinks he's developing and is developing real feelings for his male friend. Um, and so uh, I was partnered with an artist, Beck Kubrick, for that story, and I just love the work Beck did on it. So when I was doing the 4-page Yeti and the Big Stop and looking for an artist, I reached back out to Beck. And Beck, they said they were busy, but they gave me a few names, and one was Amber's. And I looked at Amber's artwork, and I just instantly like, oh yeah, this is absolutely everything I'm looking for this 4-page story. And so got in touch with Amber, sent her the script. Amber, she's a graduate of a SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design. She really likes drawing fantastical creatures. I could tell that right away from her portfolio. And so she did the Yeti and the Big Stomp. And then when I thought about pitching it as a fuller length graphic novel, I reached back out to Amber and I was like, I think I'm going to try and pitch this. Like, do you care? Who knows what'll happen? And she's like, no, that sounds great. Let's just see. And I sent her the outline. I'm like, look, this is what the story is going to be. This is my outline. This is what I'm thinking. And yeah,
First graphic novel, first full.
Yeah, both of ours. It's both of our first graphic novels.
Little did she know what she was getting into. She tossed off, "Oh, sure, I could do a whole book."
Yeah, we both learned a lesson in how long, especially Amber. She said how long it takes, to draw and color, 116 or 118 pages. So yeah, and I mean she crushed it. You know.
One thing we do on the show, Jimmy, is we talk pretty candidly about how hard it is to make comics, but also we talk pretty openly about the mm, imbalance between the work that the writer has versus the work the artist has. And so, one of the things that we talk about a fair amount at the studio is that, for example, if a writer has got 100 pages to illustrate, then it sort of falls upon the illustrator, it falls upon the writer to do the business side, do the contract side, do all that other work that goes into making the book. And I know from looking you up a little bit that you have a background in law. So I want to know, like, how did that working relationship come together, and how did you balance, the fact that you just asked this first time illustrator to do 100 pages of a book? What was the balance of efforts?
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. I mean, I wrote the first draft of the script in about 3 months. But it took Amber, and Amber works. She's, I think, a paraprofessional that works with children where she lives in Massachusetts, and I think she works part-time at the Eric Carle Children's Book Museum. So she has, she's working full time, and certainly took her a lot longer than 3 months to draw, and color all of these pages. I do think she enlists the help of her sibling, Charlie Aiken, to flat some of the book.
I
But
was going to ask that. I know
it's
in the credit.
yeah,
Someone got pulled in on this. Yeah.
yeah. But it's a lot. It's a lot of work. Amber trusted me, which I am forever grateful for in terms of coming along on this journey and creating this book. Early on, when we were presented with like the paper cuts contract stuff, I was like, if you want to get your own attorney or agent or whatever it is you're going to do, if you trust me to try and, you know, negotiate if there's anything we have to talk about, like I'm happy to do all of that. I tried to be very clear early on. We are, you know, 50-50 in this. Like, you're just not an artist that I am hiring for this. Like, if we're doing a full graphic novel, like we're co-creators, we're in it. And if there's anything I can do to make your life easier, I, would try and do. So we got through the script, my first draft, and then all the edits, and then it was like Amber's time to go to work. And now, um, I'm trying to do, set up the interviews, do that stuff, include Amber as much as she can, that her schedule allows to be included on, all of these interviews. As a host of a podcast myself, so many times like you have writers on, and I'm always trying to get more and more artists on. And so I told Amber, I'm like, some I might have to set up myself just because of timing and scheduling. I said, but as much as you want to be involved, I want you there, as well, because the way I look at it, like I tried to write a great story. And I think I did, with the help of, Stephanie and Teddy and the editors on this book. But this story is absolutely nothing without Amber's artwork. I mean, it is so inviting. And just like you had said earlier, I think you do feel safe. And I think all the credit in that is Amber's artwork. So
Yeah.
hopefully somewhere in that rambling, I answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's great. Amber, if you're listening and you feel like you have not been served by this person or this podcast, you please feel free to reach out. I'd love to have you on to talk about the artistic process. My question to you now is a little bit granular. You had the idea to pitch it. You had 4 pages of artwork. Your artist had said, sure, why don't you? You reached out to Mad Cave first, or did you have a list of publishers? How did you end up with Paper Cuts, and how did you? My real question underneath it is, did she begin working on the project before the publisher gave you an editor, or after?
Yeah, neither of us really, other than the 4-page short and my outline, we really didn't do any other work on it. Yeah, I really didn't know what was going to come of this, to be quite frank. I've written before this. I have written a handful of short stories, short comics that I've worked with artists and colorists and letterers to be published in a handful of anthologies. I think the longest story I'd ever written before this is like a 10-page story. But I want to do more. It's tough. I have a full-time job. I have 2 kids. I have, my wife, and we try to do stuff together too, because we do like each other. And I set myself up with a challenge, and I said, okay, I'm going to come up with an outline, and I'm going to figure out one of these shorts that I have, or one of these ideas. I'm going to just try and put documents together to pitch a graphic novel, just to get it done. And I know Mad Cave had open submissions. I know I'm a big fan of Mad Cave's comics. I interview on my podcast a lot of Mad Cave creators. I know they have Maverick, which is like their YA middle grade imprint. And I knew they had Paper Cuts. And I said, so I know that through somebody over there, this story might work at one of those imprints, like maybe Maverick or maybe Paper Cuts, whatever it might be.
And
so it was really just
for those dear listeners who play the How Does Publishing Really Work game, they're distributed also by Simon & Schuster. It's a good missing piece of the puzzle there.
I want you to think about this just for a moment. Us. Life. Time. Magazines. Cover stories. I mean, you could be looking at old Dad on the Carson show, for heaven's sakes.
Pitching it was kind of as a test to myself to do this, because I'm a great procrastinator. I really like deadlines. If I just have like an open type of situation, I'll always find a reason to not do something. And it's like, well, you want to write, you have to write. You want to be a writer, you have to write. But I'm really great with like a deadline, just like Bruce Willis in Armageddon. Like, I've never missed a depth. If you tell me where to hit, when to hit it, I'll hit it. But if you're just like, yeah, just turn it in whenever, you got to tell me when you want it. I'll definitely get a ton of time.
You also big on
So yeah,
sacrifice, like Bruce Willis in Armageddon? Yeah.
no, not
And
not
there's
not
not crying son-in-law in this, example?
no. It ends. Analogy ends at hitting the depth at hitting the deadline. Yeah. So I just sent it to Man Cave. I put it in their open submission portal and thought I did it. That's all I wanted to accomplish. I put the outline together. I put the pieces together. I sent the art in. I did everything that they wanted to do. And yeah, and then lo and behold, I got an email. I'm not sure how long it took, maybe a month or so later, from Stephanie Brooks that they had reviewed it, they liked it, they wanted to talk more about it, and we didn't do any other work on it yet though. I kept, thinking it, I'm a practical guy. I was just like, who knows? Who knows what'll happen? I think until Amber and I both signed the contract and I came downstairs and my wife, Sarah, was sitting on the couch and she looked up at me as I walked down the stairs and she's like, what? And I'm like, I have to do it now. I have to write. Like, I just told them I can produce a 114-page graphic novel. I gave myself 3 months to do a full draft of the script. I said, so I gotta do it now. She goes, well, this is what you want to do, right? And I'm like, yeah, it is. It is. I just kind of can't believe that it's actually happening. And now we're like 2 months away from the book coming out. And it's wild to think that this was something that started with Penny and I coming up with an idea for a story and, almost 4 years ago. It was maybe May or June of 2022.
Yeah, at a certain time, at a certain point in the creative process, what you want is no longer relevant, and only what you've chosen is now at hand. So at a certain point, you just have to make it now, right?
Yeah.
To keep your
Oh, absolutely.
and your book comes out. Looks like April 21st. It looks like the on sale date for
Yep.
Penny and the Yeti. What is the process now for you as a first time creator to say, oh, now I'm knee deep in bookland? What's that like for you? What are your fears? Unburden yourself. Jimmy.
Oh, sure. For someone who talks like as my job, like so much of my job is just, talking. I mean, there's legal research and writing. I'm a plaintiff's personal injury attorney and we do employee workers compensation, but it's a ton of talking. And I'm one of the hosts of the Cryptid Creator Corner podcast. I've been doing that for a couple of years now. I do a lot of talking and usually it doesn't affect me, but I've done a few of these, other interviews and podcasts, and I'm surprised at I feel a little bit of the butterflies before I go on having to talk about the book and talk about myself, and I can talk about my collaborators. I can talk about Amber. I can talk about the folks at Paper Cuts who've been wonderful. I can talk about Stephanie and Teddy, the editors, Buddy Beaudoin, the letterer. I've worked with Buddy before. Buddy's amazing. Tim Daniel, who I'm a huge fan of. Tim Daniel designed the Penny and the Yeti logo. I could talk about everybody else, but there's still a little bit of, I don't know if apprehension is the right word. And yeah, there's a bit of I not that it's I'm used to rejection. Criticism is part of putting yourself out there in any type of creative field. But I'm trying not to be too precious about it. If people don't like the book or if whatever it might be, I they're entitled to their opinion. I tried my best, and I know that all the collaborators who we worked together to put out the absolute best story that we could and to really accomplish what it was we set out to do. But yeah, there's still a little bit of, I want
Are
people
you
to like it.
are you a person comfortable? Have you received bad reviews before?
Well, not about Penny and the Yeti.
No, but
but
you've been the recipient of negative criticism regarding your the work you love.
no, I think I'm still too new in terms of anything I've written. I don't think anyone's ever told me that one of the stories that is in an anthology was bad. I think
But
the
they were
worst has
honest.
been
Jimmy,
What?
I think you and I have to look each other in the eye and know there are people who don't like your work, and the bigger your audience, the more chances they have to reach you. And so
Oh.
this being the biggest audience you've had, you have to harden your heart to the idea that because your book will make people feel things. I felt things reading it. And there'll be things that people feel uncomfortable facing as a result of that book. I would not be surprised that some misplaced anger and resentment ends up in the comment section under your book. And I think you have to view that as a win, should it happen.
Well, I think if folks feel I mean, I thought about this before. I think if folks feel anything, I would look at that as a win. I think the worst thing is, apathy. Like for someone's review to be like meh, just see like a capital MEH like under it. Um that's I think that's worse than a bad review. But yeah, I know that that comes with the territory. I guess there's still a little apprehension, about it. This being the first, like the debut graphic novel for Amber and I. Um, but
Other
yeah.
people's opinion of you aren't really your business, though. Your
Oh
business,
my gosh,
right?
I say one of the partners at the firm here that I work for, uh, was talking about another attorney who was like, um it had something negative to say about something he had done in a case, and I that's exactly what I told him. I said, "Other people's opinion of you is none of your business. Like, don't you can't worry about it. You did the right thing. You did what it is you thought was the best for the client, and that's where you have to leave it." So, I'm
One thing
trying to keep that in mind for myself. I'm very great about, putting other people's stuff in perspective and then not my own, but I think that's a very human condition.
My wife points out sometimes that you should only, if you're standing in the sand of the arena, you should only take criticism from the person fighting in front of you and not from the people yelling from the stands. And so it sounds like your people at Paper Cuts, who are in the arena with you, they are champions of the book. They believe in the book. That's the opinions that matter. The people who understand who they're trying to reach with that kind of work. Um, did you have a reader in mind, or did they suggest to you a reader that would be in mind?
No, I felt with Amber's artwork, certainly, I thought younger readers, would be in mind. Uh, I didn't have a particular age group. They asked me, and only because I started the story with Penny, and I always tried to keep my Penny, not the character of Penny, but I always tried to keep like my Penny in mind. So throughout this process, from when we started the very first short until now, I mean, she's going to be 9 in May. So I kind of that 5 to 9 age group, like I wanted to make it accessible to her, but also that I thought older kids and parents certainly could read as well.
George, what is it?
I don't know. I hardly saw it. But it's got to be a bear.
Could it be a gorilla?
I don't think they get that big around here.
It's cool to see your own work through the eyes of your children sometimes when they respond or don't respond. When my kids were much younger, they're older now, almost 15 and almost 17, but when they were but little lads, I work on all ages work on one side of the column and very sinister horror related stuff on the other side. And so they would knock on the door sometimes of the studio and say, Dad, can I come in? Is what you're working on safe for me to see? And so that was such a strange part of me as a father to be like, is it safe? Well, of course it's safe. I am like, you're not in danger here, but there are things you can't unsee. So I guess that's true. I'm going to hide these scary drawings over here and come on in and we'll read a bedtime story. Do you
Yeah.
have something else planned with Mad Cave? Have you started, now that you know that you're a pitching wonder, that your ideas always get picked up on the very first try? Have you started pitching other things?
Um, I did pitch one other thing after this, but they passed on it. So I'm still deciding what it is I
Back to
want to do with.
reality. That's good. That's
Yeah, back to reality right away. So that's it. Look, That's how it happens. Just because they like your first idea doesn't mean that they're going to pick up everything you like. Um, there's for listeners, there's I'm sure other folks on your podcast have said it, but there's a ton of consideration to go into that. Not just the story idea itself, but if they have something similar, like already in the pipeline, you know. But yeah, I had pitched something else which they had passed on, and I'm still deciding what it is I'm going to do. I had kickstarted an anthology of some of my short stories, a few that had been published and a few that never saw the light of day. So I kind of wanted to put them all into a book. So I had a book of, shorts, and I kickstarted that. It took a while to finish a couple of stories, but that was all done. And just 2 weekends ago, we shipped out all the books to backers. So I finished that, and now we're gearing up for the publication of Penny and the Yeti. And yeah, I'm trying to figure out what it is I want to do next. If I do want to pitch a couple ideas to other publishers, or if I want to just try and make it myself and crowdfund it. So I haven't figured it out yet. I'm trying to get through the publication date of Penny and the Yeti, and then I'll fire up the old writing engine and figure out what I'm doing.
In your bio, it says that you're a fan of time travel stories. Do you have a time travel story in you?
Yes.
Oh, look,
Yeah.
no hesitation.
100%. No, none whatsoever. Actually, the backers who backed Made in Delco, which is the anthology, I did a digital deluxe version so that they could get not just a digital PDF of it, but also the scripts, if there were any, folks who were interested in what the script looked like. So I love back matter in a comic that has the script. That was so hugely helpful to me in, kind of figuring out the comic writing process. But I also included I don't know, a 4,000 word short prose story called Mr. Warlow, which is a time travel story that I would love to make into a comic. Yeah.
Okay, well now here's where as time has wended its way, speaking of time, to near the end of the show, this is the heavy question. This is
Okay.
partway through reading Penny and the Yeti. I stopped and I wrote down this thought. And this is a thought that I had when it's a holdover, it's an orphan idea. I was speaking to an editor over at what was the publisher there? Anyway, the point is, books are sometimes proxies for parents. They're sometimes proxies for teachers. Sometimes the right kid finds the right book at the right time, and they are provided the lesson that they have needed. And this really struck me in reading your book. It feels like the kind of book where the right person at the right time maybe is going to have some tools that they didn't have by the end of that story. And so my question to you is, what responsibility does your old self have to your young self when you're working on a book? Do you think that we have a responsibility as creatives? We're trying to entertain, but we can do more than that if we want.
I mean, I think it's twofold. I think we certainly can. There's certainly value in entertainment and escapism. I mean, I even think that can be value to our old self. There were certainly many things, or many times I can think of where I just needed a break and turn to something that maybe isn't high art, but that ability to escape into something different was hugely helpful. But I do think we have a responsibility to our younger selves. Like I want to, I want to make stuff that I think not only that my younger self would enjoy or be proud of. Um, so yeah, I think we do. But I think there can be value in both stuff that can teach a lesson maybe or help somebody when they need it. But I do think there is value in just, hey, I wish there was this thing when I was a kid that just was really super cool. And you know what? We'll make that. Make that for that kid that's just really cool, and it doesn't have to be a lesson. It can just be a break from, you know, the weight of existence, not to get too heavy.
No, you get heavy. It's a heavy world, right? A change is as good as a rest, they say, right? And sometimes just going to another place is all you get. Just a
Yeah.
time. And books are such a wonderful place to go. Um, have you guys thought about the change in readership, the change in which in how books reach people these days? Is that part of your conversation, your now I'm an author that has to promote my book conversation with Paper Cuts and with Mad Cave?
Certainly. Just in terms of how that happens now, um, you know, whether or not it happens more on social media or if it's still getting out to comic shops, trying to set up signings, going to conventions, like going to the American Library Association, like the ALA, or going to New York Comic Con, like whatever it is. It's all part of it. I'm trying to do as much promotion as I can in terms of YouTube shows, podcasts, but I'm also trying to set up signings locally. I'm reaching out to schools to see if they would be interested in having me come and talk to like their third and fourth grade class about Penny and the Yeti. And I'm trying to set something up at my local library. Shout out to the Brandywine 100 Library. It's amazing. Um,
Maybe every law library in the country needs one also.
I think so. Why not?
Yeah, why not? That's exactly
Why not?
that's the next hill for you to climb.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I've so enjoyed talking to you about this book, but also to getting to know you a little bit. It's interesting because so many people who usually wend their way onto the podcast, we know a little bit, um, off screen, off air a little bit. So this is the first time in a while where uh, somebody has said, "You should talk to this guy. You'll like him." And then I was like, well, since I don't know if I like him or not, I'm going to have to read the book and I'll have to base my opinions on the work and not the person. And yes, there you go. Right. So
Man,
it's a heavy burden. And I have to say,
it is.
it did not feel like the work of a first time creator. Once I finished reading it, I went looking to see what else you had done of that size and scope. So I think if this is your first one out the gate, um, just keep pitching. They're fools not to say yes to those ideas. I wish you well. Dear listeners, if you are trying to get a uh, books for all ages made, you've heard it here. Mad Cave has open submission policies. They have a number of different places you can submit for teens and to kids and to adults. Um, they're rep by Simon and Schuster in the book market, so they have a little bit of reach, and they have no trouble accepting first time submissions. So, RIP the slush pile over at Paper Cuts now. Uh, said that, but you got in early, so it's going to be fine. Dear listener, this has been Super Pulp Science. I'm Jim B. Kamichuk, encouraging you all to join the fight and make comics.